Good evening, everyone. I said good evening, everyone. Hey, thank you. We're almost at the end of the first week. Well done, everybody. A round of applause to yourself. That's good. You all applauded. If people would not respond, I make you get up and do a dance, yeah? So watch out. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And we're going to be talking about capturing and showcasing progress in adaptation and development. And we have tonight 4 great panelists. And we're going to be hearing from country experiences. So no experts on this panel, well, all experts actually in their own countries, but very, very much based on their experiences. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Denise Love Dennis, and I'm from Liberia. I work with the Environmental Protection Agency as media and communication specialist. And it is a great platform that I can say, sharing my country experience as it relates to adaptation, what works well, the challenges that comes forth, and we can see how best we can learn from each other, looking at the different exchanges here for. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ketiwe Kumalo. I'm from the Kingdom of Eswatini. I am working with the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs in the Department of Meteorology and working on climate change. So I coordinate the National Climate Change Program, and one of my responsibilities is to coordinate the National Adaptation Planning process. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nga Chan, and I'm from Department of Climate Change, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Vietnam. So I want to say thank you to NAP Global Network and Emily for the change to share our adaptation context and sharing experience with other countries. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Dr. Hans Jamba from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm the NDA of the DRC. So this is a good time for me to be here. I believe that DRC is one of the biggest countries in Africa. And I came here with my proud so I can talk about my country, about the NAP, special vulnerability of the population. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our 4 panelists. And tonight, I'm not going to speak very much because we have 4 people who are going to talk about much more interesting things. But the setting of this is mostly because the NAP Global Network works a lot to support country partners partly on monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems. So how to understand the progress being done on adaptation in their countries, in their communities, in their ecosystems. Now, one thing that maybe some of you, but definitely us, we've realized is that too often development progress and climate adaptation progress are considered in silos. They're not really articulated together. And this way, we're missing a lot of synergy. So what does it mean to have adaptation progress in the light of wider development strategies and wider development goals? Today, we're going to hear from the 4 panelists on their own different country experiences. Different both in terms of how they are capturing adaptation outcomes. So different approaches to monitoring, evaluation, and learning, different stages of monitoring, evaluation, and learning, but also different strategies of development. And we're going to ask them, how do measuring adaptation outcome fit in their development strategies? What are the benefits of doing so? What are the challenges? How they have overcome these challenges, and also what are the risks, the perils of not linking adaptation and development. Without more comments from me, please, Na, please take it away.
I want to share the adaptation context in Vietnam. As you know, in COP26, Vietnam has made many commitments, such as the net zero commitment. We have signed the declaration for the land and land use, and we have become the member of Adaptation Action Coalitions. And this is have changed a lot in our countries, because this is commitment have offer ambitious agenda to the pathway to achieve the net zero by 2050, and this is a change for us to restructure our economy. And you may know that Vietnam, the percentage of Vietnam pollutions in the total global consists only 0.5%. So for us, for the countries that in the top of 10 most vulnerable countries, adaptation is more important than mitigation. So because of this commitment, they opened the change for us to attract more financial support from other countries and all other financial institutions and development partners to restructure our economy. Our NAP process has started in 2016, and in 2020, our Prime Minister has ratified the NAP, reached the main strategy and a measure for the sector that most vulnerable to climate change, such as agriculture, tourism, transport, disaster risk reductions, and other sectors. And along with the NAP, we have developed our M&E system, which is helping us to measuring the adaptation action at the country level as well as a local level. We have 63 provinces in our country. So the M&E system have to be applied in the line ministry and 63 provinces. And we have the M&E online system that the provinces and locality may report to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment online, so we can track the adaptation process in line ministry and provinces. And we have 72 indicators in our M&E system, consists of the indicator with gender sensitivity, and the indicator that help us to encourage the private sector to engage in the adaptation progress. This year, 2022, is the first year we are applying our M&E system, but we hope that from the experience of the locality and line ministry, we can develop and make our indicator more fit for the local and the line ministry. So I think that M&E is the process we are learning, and we will improve our system. And this system will help us to track how the adaptation process is going on, and we can know that what we need and what we have to do to accelerate the adaptation progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that's amazing. Hearing from a commitment to go net zero by 2050 and collecting adaptation data in 63 provinces online. We're all looking forward to having the first report. So please tell us when it's going to be out. Is it going to be published?
Yes, we will have the published report, and then based on these data sets, we will use this for our management in the country. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to that. Hans, would you be telling us next about your country experience? So how is adaptation captured in DRC, and how is it linked to development or not?
Yes, thank you very much. I believe that the DRC has many experience in terms of in terms of vulnerability. I believe that one of the problems we are doing now in DRC, we already in our pipeline in the GCF, we already did almost 2 NAP. That means it's a good sign. But in the same time, the poverty and is rising, you see. So it's hard now to try to measure the level, the degree of vulnerability. However, there are some indicators, external indicators, just where people are relying on. Mostly in DRC, the economy development is seen like one of the indicators, because when the economy is going good for policy in terms of the country, they making the decision people, they believe that the poverty is going down. What is not the realities, because most of things we can have a strong economy and one part of the population in high poverty. That's what the Congo is going to. We know also one of the problems is trying to just bring Congo down is what's going on in terms of war going on in the eastern part of Congo. The mining issue, we know it. People are just thinking, they're trying to rely on Congo to get this mining and just to sell it worldwide. That's one of the big barriers we are facing today in DRC. So like I say, the war started almost 20 years or 25 years since now, and no one is trying to help this war to stop. So it's a country today. There's one of the big, I can say, knowledge. When there are some UN entity where they develop one concept calling how to build peace in the country. That's what the Congo now is almost in this group of countries where how we can just build peace before we can just try to reduce vulnerabilities, because it's hard. It's hard in this situation to bring these people. Most of them became refugees. They don't know where to live. They keep just going city after cities. However, recently the country tried now to understand, but the best thing to do is just not just to talk about just the war. It's about how we can keep the other provinces. The DRC has 26 provinces. I can tell you the provinces in the eastern part are almost the most vulnerable today because of the war. So in general, we need to think in Congo that the data about vulnerability are not available. Also, in this zone war, it's hard to collect data. But the best approach we are using today is the qualitative, because we believe that when we use the qualitative approach, it will be a good way to bring people to respond to the answer, or to try to bring what they are live. They try to express what they are live where in the field. That's what I can say now about the DRC, and I believe that it will just help. Also, I believe when we'll be going in discussion, I'll be bringing more input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, and for telling us about the challenges of getting data development and adaptation data in conflict-affected countries. And so I know you have a PhD and you have a background in accounting. So the fact that you're talking about qualitative data means a lot. In just a few words, can you tell us what would be a good indicator? What is a good measure for you of vulnerability in your country?
Yeah. I think that the best way is just we need, the NAP, vulnerability, adaptation are almost in the same family. Okay, that means when we need to try to catch the poverty level, we can just use a survey. That means the best approach. Myself too, or in my PhD, that's what I did. I just use the qualitative, because when we are using qualitative. That means you are not just you try to provoke people to speak about their life. So the feedback, it became for you, the input now. That's what I can say as a strategy.
Thank you so much, Hans. I'm going to switch the order a bit, and I'm actually going to turn to Ketsiwe, sorry, because it follows very well, talking about qualitative data collection, and you're going to tell us about your experience in Eswatini to collect stories of traditional knowledge. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emily. And the Eswatini, I think, is part of one of the countries that is in the process of developing the National Adaptation Plan. But this is happening, I think, in the context of economic development. I think, as you know, that many countries, not only Eswatini, have been impacted by COVID-19. And this is all happening within the country, trying to strive in its economic growth and economic recovery. And in that context, Eswatini has prioritized climate change because of the experiences, I think, that we have seen in terms of the impacts of climate change across the different sectors. So the main objective with our National Adaptation Plan is how we are going to integrate adaptation in the national development planning process. For us, this is the bigger picture. And we are not only just in a rush to have a national adaptation plan, but for us, it is more about the process on itself. And because through this process, I think this is where we get to put in place systems that are going to be sustainable and interaction among the different sectors and institutions that are driving economic growth in the country. So in this context, Eswatini has prioritized 5 sectors in each adaptation, and this includes agriculture, health, biodiversity, and ecosystems, and most importantly, infrastructure, because we have seen over time how climate impacts have impacted our infrastructure. And through this process, we are also looking in terms of how, as we develop the National Adaptation Planning process, how do we interface with all the other processes that are happening on the ground? We know our countries are into sustainable development goals. We know that we are also party to the Sendai framework in terms of disaster risk reduction. How do we integrate all this planning system and able to achieve maximum benefit for our communities? So in this context, we are also looking at developing monitoring and evaluation learning systems. And for us, this is very important. But before we get there, I think one thing we have to understand is that our country has been adapting to the impacts of climate change. And we took that initiative as a ministry driving the National Adaptation Planning process to understand really what communities are experiencing, what are the impacts that are highly on the agenda from the communities, and how communities are impacting it at a local context, so that we create that learning platform that is going to inform the National Adaptation Planning process in the country. And through the support of the NAP Global Network, we took an outreach program and identified 4 communities in the scattered around the 4 agroecological region of the country. And we specifically and intelligently selected these communities because we understand that we wanted to interact with different groups that have different experiences. And what we are looking for is to understand what is the traditional knowledge systems that we can actually get and understand from these communities. And it was quite a very eye-opening experience to understand that communities understand the impacts of climate change, and they have a way of interpreting this thing as they impact them at a community level. And through nature systems that they interact with each and every day, they are able to draw coping mechanisms and use that at a farm level, at a household level, at a community level to cope with the impacts of climate change. And this for us is a wealth of knowledge and experience that we want to incorporate in our monitoring and evaluation. And we are looking for a way in terms of how do we link this to the national processes, and how do we upscale some of these processes or approaches that communities are using, and how do we replicate this knowledge or these traditional technologies that communities are using to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So for us, this is a very good space where we are in terms of understanding our local context, and also how do we inform the national context with local experiences. And one thing for sure that I can share with you is that I think we have had, and most of you and most of the countries are trying now to prioritize nature-based solution or ecosystem-based adaptation. And for me, traditional knowledge is the entry point for us to do that, because we know that communities have been working with nature. We know that communities have been interacting with their ecosystem. And one interesting story that I can share that we learned from one of the community outreaches, how communities have been through the community wetland, getting early warning in terms of incoming drought, and if the season is going to have plentiful of rain, by the sound of the wetland, the species that within the wetland, they understand that if we hear this kind of a frog, sound from a frog persistently, what does it mean? And also, if we see this kind of species around the wetland, what does it mean? And this to them, it's an early warning system that we scientists, we define in another way, but the communities understand it in its way, and they interpret it, and they use that information to make farm level decisions for them that are going to work. And this is how they've been coping with the impacts of climate change. And now the bigger question is, how do we amplify? How do we take this information and incorporate it in our national development processes, in our MNL systems? Because this is actually very important and useful information. So this is what I can share. I think there is quite a lot, I think, to learn from these experiences, and I'm happy that I'm happy with my colleagues coming from different countries, and I'm also learning in terms of what is happening in those countries. And a platform like this, I think, is what gives us its inspiration, because we get to understand that what we are part of an ecosystem, an international ecosystem, and we don't necessarily have to depend on national context, but we have platforms to learn and see how we can upscale, replicate such processes at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kesiwe. And and I can say I find you all inspiring. So thanks for being here. Can I ask just a quick question? So it's often difficult. People, governments, NGOs actually find it daunting to go and collect data at the local level, because there are so many communities. So how do you reach other communities? So can you tell us in Eswatini, how did you decide which communities? So what was the approach to select the communities, and what was the sampling, if you want, strategy, please?
Yeah, it's very quite interesting. We actually initiated this, and we had identified a task team that was made of multi-sectoral experts coming from the sectors that I've highlighted as prioritized. And some of these people, they were not only just coming from the government, but also from NGOs and also from the academia, and they have interacted with communities. So we use the university. First, they identify a very rich community in biodiversity and ecosystem that has got species that are in the red list. So we found that was interesting. And then we also chose one community that had received quite a lot of attention in terms of development partners, NGO, government, working with them in terms of adaptation, because this community is coming from a very dry area in the country. So over years, they've been experiencing persistent drought. So it received a lot of attention. So we identify, and the main reason for us to choose this community was to actually learn and understand what kind of lessons can we draw in such a session. Is it enough? How are they receiving this support that they are getting? Is it sustainable? Is it working for them? How is it identified in the first place? Is it just partners giving the support, or they own the solutions? And then we also choose another one where there are a lot of herbalists, traditional healers. And then we chose one in a peri-urban area, because we know that sometimes we think that there are no the towns, they just mushroom. You know, when a town develops, the people around are the ones who suffer. Sometimes they lose their land because the town is expanding outwards. And we realize that there's a lot of urban poverty in that area. And this is why we chose it, because most of the time we talk about adaptation at a local level, at a community level, and forget about adaptation at an urban level. So for us, these are the type of communities that we chose, because we understood that by choosing these different settings, we will come up with different learnings and different coping strategies. And this is what we are going to use to inform the national process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So using different criteria, making sure that you pick different settings that are representative to capture all the variety of perceptions. Thank you. Now, Denise, you've been waiting. Tell us about the situation in Liberia. Yes.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I sat keenly listening to my colleague. The situation with Liberia is not different as compared to what the world is actually facing globally. So if we look at Liberia is indeed facing an increased experience in these climate challenges. Historically, we talk about the contribution to the greenhouse gas emission concentration. Our country, again, is actually confronted with these challenges that we speak about today. But now let's look at our own commitment. So at COP 26 in Glasgow, the President of the Republic of Liberia, His Excellency, Mr. George M. Weah, what he did, he gave a clarion call that the effect of climate change poses on this country, but yet they do not have what it takes as a developing country or least developed country. So it was a call that people who emit should be able to come up. He did not stop there with that. We also look at prior in June, in 2021, before COP, we had the National Conference on Climate Change and Environment. So at that conference, again, the president had all our ministers, executive directors of line ministries and agencies coming together to see how best they can have a collaborated approach in addressing the climate change issue. It's not an issue where you have just a single institution working on it, but rather it was a collective approach that we went forward with. If at that conference, we were able to sign a sectorial declaration, and that sectorial declaration was signed by 9 ministries and agencies, and all of them committed themselves in working along with looking at the implementation of Liberia nationally determined contributions. So further on that year, now with our NAP, I listened to her, she's like, okay, it's a process coming through. 1 second. It is for her country, it's like they are in the process, unlike Liberia, who have launched her NAP, she have developed it and has been launched. Our NAP look at our whole society approach. So it is a great document that you could look at and see how best, but the standard in which the X20 is looking at is something that is very good. Liberia NAP, as we spoke about, it looks at strengthening the existing planning processes by integrating climate change adaptation across all sectors. And our NAP talk about the sectors of 9 different sectors, and now with the implementation aspect on the sectoral approach of climate change adaptation, Liberia NAB look at priority areas that talks about agriculture, forestry, energy, fish trade, and as well as the waste management. Under our NAB, it also set a guideline for establishing the monetary evaluation and learning system for adaptation. So we as a country actually taking our first step when it comes to establishing the system. And we are proud to say with support from the NAB Global Network, who have been seriously working with Liberia, we have come far in developing that system. One key thing we need to take into consideration is that first step, it also includes the learning from the work and tracking all of our reports on the SDGs as well. So looking at the implementation action, our system, our NAB is being guided by Liberia's NDC implementation plan. That plan, we launched it at COP27 days ago, but initially that plan was launched in Liberia where we had the presidents being the one to launch it. But instead, because of national engagement, our foreign minister was the one that proxied for the president. So that document has been formally launched in Liberia. So looking at our linkages, what it offers, Liberian NAB process consider the existing legal document. So it coincides with our legal framework and a policy framework as well. And all in turn to integrate the adaptation of the country's overall approach, ensuring that the social, economical, and that of the issue of responsible stewardship takes a natural on. We also want to share on this medium that our NAB, which has strong linkage to the national sector development strategy, also aim at the planning processes, as well as integrating climate change adaptation into consideration. So evidence, like we said, we have the environmental sector working group, and this group comprises of representatives from every ministries and agency. We look at the private sector as well coming into play. Additional ministries of finance planning, which actually provide an opportunity for sharing on adaptation progress. As Tana said, the issue of the mail. Now for Liberia experience, our technical report on the mail system is to be published as early as 2023. And that we hope for. So, and again, it was supported by the NAB network. Another one that is key is that NAB, and it's the proposed system that we are speaking about. It is key in this alignment with our work from the Ministry of Finance, Development and Planning. They are key in a sense because they are the government arm, we are government, but then the issue of including private sector, businesses and everything into it and making it all on the table are another thing that we look at. On our challenges cannot be overrated. We cannot stick to challenges, but however, we identify those challenges and see what best we have done. And some of those challenges, we would just categorize it into 4, leading from the limited issue on data. We all know data have been some sticky issue all around. That is one. We also talk about the lack of interministerial agency coordination. We also look at the finance, limited finance or resources. But with this, oh, 1 second. Yeah, I know. Now, looking at the policy makers and everything, what Liberia has done is that we have established this mail system that we also spoke about. And another one we did was the development of the EKMS. So the EKMS is the environmental management system, wherein we have, through the Global Environmental Facility, we were able to establish that in Liberia. Now you have key environmental experts that are on that platform. We fill in data coming from the different hubs that we have set in the different line ministries and agency. On a capacity building development, which is another key to our NAB, it was the issue of capacity building was one thing that was a challenge. But how did Liberia address it? Is the issue of working along with the University of Liberia, where we now have the university having an undergraduate and graduate program in environmental and climate change. Why that program? We believe that if we have that capacity built nationally, it will actually boost the country's own will actually boost the country's own way to address climate change issue. So at that point, you will have national stakeholders owning, because they know what it is. They have gone through the rank and file for this thing, and then getting as well as degree, and then it actually built that capacity in that. We also talk about the creation of awareness hour. So at Liberia, we have this program that's learning. You do learning by doing. So the learning by doing program is the Environmental Protection Agency hour that you have our technicians there go to the radio and then actually explain what the environmental impacts are, how we can address it, and it is a program that enlightens people, inform and educate people on the impact of climate change and how we can address it as a program. When it comes to the interministerial coordination, it was a challenge. But right now, as we speak, it's kind of slowing down because we have the environmental sector working group. So the environmental sector working group comes to bear different line ministries and agencies that meets quarterly. And when there's an emergent issue, they also meet like monthly to discuss what's the way forward and find solution to address these issues in the country. For access to funding, so financial resources have always been a sticking issue all around. But Liberia have been also supported by the Green Climate Fund, wherein we have done some adaptation projects in the country. And some of those projects has to do with the coastal add-on project that we have in Recruitown. So it's an adaptation project that we actually took onto. We also talk about the Monrovia Metropolitan Coastal Resilience Project. That project is also actually ongoing in the country. And then finally, the Coastal Defense Project and a whole lot of projects when it comes to adaptation in Liberia. With the need for coordination, it is simple. What Liberia has done is that we look at the ongoing financial and technical assistance from the NAP process. And then we also look at the developing this MELD system. And finally, we have come to the stand that we were able to complete the GCF NAP project that we worked on previously, and it actually gave us a boost. And now with all of these things, Liberia stands on a path that our coordination is kind of key. We have now capacity building institutions and boost to the University of Liberia. We also look at the coordination aspect, and now the ownership is where we stand at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Denise. Quick question. You mentioned, and quick answer. You mentioned that there is some engagement with private sector actors. What is your trick? Have they come to the table easily, and how is that working in Liberia?
Okay, so from the onset, everybody thought that this climate change issue in Liberia was a myth. People feel it was a way that the government tried to just call unnecessary attention, but we've put more into awareness raising. Where we had the awareness hour, like I spoke about initially, we have programs on all of our national radios talking about climate change issue. We also did not stop there. We talk about political buy-in. And to have that political buy-in, we have to have government actors on the table sitting there to discuss way forward. They can only make decisions when they actually understand what works well. So it's not like technicians sitting at the Environmental Protection Agency just making a decision because they are the experts when it comes to climate change, but getting our lawmakers involved, wherein that they will be able to understand, pass bill, looking at the framework that supports the proper agenda for prosperity and development. So all of that, if you look at our NAP, you look at the NDCs, you look at all those documents that is in, they are all intertwined with, all supports our national document. So because it supports the national document, it's a call of action that all of our national stakeholders, they all come on the table to discuss. And it's not just at that government ministers where you have only ministers. We also move down to the private sector. They too have a part to play in the discussion of adaptation. We also look at the rural communities, the indigenous people. We look at the disabled community as well. So we had that conference that I told you about, the national conference. It brought to bear all of those people on the table to actually see how best we can find solution, be a part of the solution, and then move forward in the whole climate change issue, and especially with the adaptation fund.
So, with the example of Na in Vietnam and Denise in Liberia, then both talked about political buy-in and commitments at the higher level. Can you tell us how does that stand in DRC? This is a more complex situation. So one would be the next step in DRC. What's the political buy-in, and what can be next steps to address challenges in DRC, and what are your aspirations and hopes for going forward?
Thank you. Hello? Hello? Okay. Thank you. Just let me start by saying that as NDA, one of my objective is to bring some what is missing, I can say, in the whole process. So I can tell you that DRC is a country the country in Africa who has almost 9 readnesses. The only country in Africa with 9 readnesses from GCF. That means we have many opportunities to learn and to try to understand what's going on, what are some barriers, except just, like I said, the war and the politics. However, as NDA, one of the projects we used, it was with the FAO. In this project, we helped the country to develop many things in terms of how we can monitor our NAP, how we can evaluate it, and how we can assess. In the same time, also we develop what we call a kind of traceability of flow, the flow of traceability of climate change in DRC. So in Congo, we are going we are trying to go in the place in the situation where we'll be having 2 mechanisms. One, just trying to drag funding for the development from the central bank, and the second one, just getting the climate finance for the sustainable development. That's these 2 ways help now the country to become more just efficient. So I believe also one of the problems we did was we just tried to select the 3 best, or I can say the 3 old nose provinces, not provinces, but cities: Lubumbashi, Kinshasa, and Kisangani. These are the 3 big cities in Congo. So in these 3 places, we developed 3 pools of group monitoring their own vulnerability, so they can just try to follow up. Like, as you know, that the NAP is just the iterative process. So it keeps just turning around. And let just explain to you one example. One of my assistants is here, technical assistant Patrick. Yes, one time we went out in the countryside. He was there. After 3 months, he went back in the same place. He found out the city was almost erosive everywhere because of they didn't that they could not just try to entertain all these things. So he told me, say, what you supposed to do? I said, that is the NAP. We need to go back, try to build capacity, try to mobilize people in the area so they can just bring the city as it was in the beginning. So another issue I can say about a NAP in DRC in terms of vulnerability or policy, one of the, I don't call it mistake, but one of the things is trying to bring people more poor is the management of the management and the target. There's no target from the policy. There's no target. Why? Because I said in the beginning, when they see people eating, they say, okay, there's no poor people here. But it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean, because in the countryside, you can go see people who don't eat. Even you are in the big city. That's one of the issues. So the government is still trying to set the instrument. We need most instruments. And I keep saying, one of the best instruments today in terms of NAP is qualitative approach. When you go to the data, they can cheat on the number. You know, the politicians, they cheat on numbers. We know that. They can provide fake numbers to justify the budget sometimes. But when you go to people through qualitative, it's straight, you have some big feedback from the field, and no one can just fool you. So I believe that DRC still has many things to learn. I know that because of what's going on. However, we are trying to bring the country in the beginning, like it was in the beginning. And I didn't say it. I say that one of the country in Africa, Central Africa, let me say about it, Central Africa, they started the first NAP was DRC. We did almost 7 years, and we have now three NAP, one already in the UNFCCC, one is going on every %, and we have another one. We are just expecting to have 400 million for the NAP, because it will be, the NAP will be funding the eastern part of Congo. So I believe that things, you know, like I said, the sky is, you know, is just welcoming us, because we are trying our best so we can try to put people in the good situation. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and for the honesty and the great discussion. And yeah, we need that. We need that to learn from adaptation. We need to also know what doesn't work, not just what works. So that's extremely important. Now, you have, you know, again, Vietnam has quite an advanced system, we can say, on on development and development. But I can guess that it doesn't mean that there are no more challenges. So can you tell us a bit more about some of the challenges that Vietnam is still facing in measuring and capturing adaptation, and especially talking, you know, taking some of the experience of other people on the panel? Would you have some lessons or experiences, what, you know, from lessons from your experience on what would work well, especially in terms of data gaps or capacity building? Feel free to pick some of these topics, not all of them.
We started developing our M&E system in 2019. Firstly, we want to merge the indicator from M&E adaptation M&E with the indicator that we are collecting from the statistical department. But we try to merge this indicator, but this indicator do not show more information that we need to measure the adaptation in our country. For example, in agricultural sector, in the statistical book, we do ask provinces to provide information about the number of the green agriculture project, but which technologies are applying in this context, this indicator do not show. So in our current M&E system, we have both quantitative indicator and both and other indicator that provinces or ministries can give us more information about the project and about the adaptation actions that they are applying at the level. Now our M&E system consists of 72 indicators. So I think that it's quite ambitious system, because at the local system, although we have with the support of NAP Global Network, we have organized training to all the provinces, but there's a lot of problems and difficulty in the local in implementing the M&E system, because the staff in the local provinces, they do not have the climate change information and also knowledge to apply the M&E system. So there's a huge difficulty in the collecting the information for the M&E indicator. So I think that the training and capacity building needs at the local level in order to implement our M&E system. So we planning, we have the locality to plan, to organize the plan for the implementations. And from the state budget, we'll have the budget for them to implement the M&E system. So they have the source of information and source of financial support to go through all the area that they are managing and collect the information needs for the M&E system. So I think that the M&E system, when applying, will have more difficulties, but we are ready for it, and we think that we from the difficulty, from the experience, we can modify, and the M&E system can be more and more convenient for the ministry and provinces in the next years. I think so.
Thank you so much, Na. And I like your comment that, you know, the difficulty in training and the staff implementing M&E system to be aware of climate change. So it's the individual awareness about development and adaptation also that needs to be internalized, not just in terms of policies or plans, etc. Ketsiwe. Yes. It would be great to hear you say the exercise was very eye-opening, and I'm interested to hear how is Eswatini planning to share the findings of these consultations to the wider public, or how is it, are there plans to share the learnings through wider dissemination in Eswatini?
Yes, we are planning to share that within the country, but also outside the country. So we have a platform in terms of sharing information among stakeholders in the country through our newsletters, where we catalog stories of change through our work. But also, I think we are going to use the NAP Global network platforms to actually share our stories so that they can reach a wider audience. And we are now working through the report to, because there was quite a lot that we got, to categorize the type of information that we have received and put together the one in terms of traditional knowledge. And then we are going to write a blog and try to also publish this information so that it is available. We are also available to have platforms like this in the region also to share with our peers in terms of what we have run, because I think going forward, traditional knowledge systems should be part of the adaptation conversation. So it's going to be very important to share such knowledge.
Thank you so much. I was going to open the floor. Denise, would you like to add any comments? Yes.
No, so basically, we're talking about the fact that it has to do with data and all of that. So our NDC that have already been launched, what next for Liberia is the fact that we look forward to the implementation plan that was launched, but now we have to set up the implementation unit. And if with support that Liberia actually looking for support when it comes to finance that part, that process, and we'll be grateful to work along with the NAP Global to see how best they can put in some level of support to that implementation unit that Liberia is about to set. And what it would do when it comes to data collection, it will actually fill from every line ministry and agency, because we now the hub that is established in all of those line ministries and agencies, those key sector, but now the hub, when one established, will be able to fill information from all of those sectors that will be able to fill to the global goal. So we, Liberia, we say that the NDC, which cannot be just a document that we have to put on the table, like we did for the NAP. The NAP, when it was launched, another thing we did the abridged version of the NAP. Now that the abridged version of the NAP brought to bear the M&E system, so which is good. But now when we have these things, the issue of continuation of these projects, it is key for maintenance. Because if you have a system like the mail system that we're working with, it has been established. What next? So the next is maintaining the capacity building that we have, keep it being active, getting more people trained in managing these systems. That is key. And as well as our data that's going to be sent into those systems also fuel to the global good of this climate change effect. And so this is where we are.
Thank you so much. So again, importance of training and iteration in the plans. There is a bit of time. We'll take some questions nonetheless, because I don't see anybody pushing us up here. Would there be any questions for our lovely panelists? Yes, Mr. Kuka. I will.
Thank you. You know I speak French, but I try to go to English in English. Yes, I accepted the panelists to relate adaptation to the goals of sustainable development, but it seems to me that this has not been done. Well, perhaps I don't understand, but it is my comment.
Donc, so I'm gonna rephrase a bit the question. So we heard different ways that measuring adaptation and adaptation outcomes also count in development, and the links between development policies and adaptation. Do you have a comment? How do you feel that measuring adaptation links more directly with the SDGs? So do you have, is there an SDG framework? How do you respond to the SDGs in your country? Do you respond to the SDGs? And is there practical, concrete linkages between the two? We're gonna start with, oh, what? No, with Denise you have. You come on, you start.
Okay, I know that SDG is too vast, you know, in terms of accounting. When just most of the country they are still lost, I can say, in this process, because like I said, that the transparency of the data is one of the big issue we are facing in Africa, because most of the time we cannot just catch everything. You know, I know even developed country they have such issues, but when you are just doing the same thing in Africa, you'll be just seeing too many gaps because the data are not just well collected, and they also we have some issue regarding the management, because you can go in one country, the case I say about the NAP peace building, where they are asking now countries to do their best when they are living in the conflict zone to try to protect all these people. They can use some strategies, but not only data, because it became very complicated for them to collect data. So also I want to say that SDG itself, in each project we are doing today, we know that we need to explain each SDG reliable. What's that? So reliable, because I cannot see a project where there is no SDG. It will look like that you are doing some fake project, I can say it, because as NDA, I cannot just let this such project to go through, because you will get in trouble when facing the GCF team. So it's important that for people to include some SDGs they have complying with the project they are doing. It should be complying with the project we are doing. That's what I can say about the SDG in my side. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask, because we're running out of time in this conversation, very quick responses, please.
In Vietnam, we do have the strategy for SDG. We do have the NDC, and we do have the climate change strategy, and we do have the NAP. And NAP is the part to concretize the adaptation part of the NDC and the National Strategy for Climate Change. So the M&E system we are using to measure how the NAP is implementing is a part of, can measure the part of the NDC and also our climate change strategy and also the SDG strategy. So I can say that all our adaptation goals are aligned in the through strategies in Vietnam.
Would there be another question? We'll take it at the same time.
Okay, thank you so much, the colleague from Congo. I was just thinking to suggest if we can use the mixed method, comprising both the qualitative and the quantitative aspect, because then it speaks to a wide range of audiences, not to donors, to researchers, policymakers, and so forth. I mean, it's a suggestion to use the mixed method. And also, I know there's war, in parts of the country, right? Okay, so which sectors are actually more impacted especially when it comes to issue of data collection and so forth? And then for you in Eswatini, right? Eswatini, former Swaziland. Very good. Yeah, I was thinking that, they're not using, the locals, right? I know that there are challenges in using science-based solutions, so they tend to use nature-based one, right? And some of the methods are using the frog or the laser is kind of strange, but it's traditional. I was thinking, how accurate is that? Does it really predict, the kind of things talking about, or is there a way to transition to a more scientific approach?
I'm gonna ask Ketsiwe to answer first, and
Yes.
then, and if Denise, would you like to speak on the SDGs? Ketsiwe, Hans, any closing statement, and after that, we're gonna get kicked out.
Thank you very much for that interesting question. I believe science and traditional knowledge can coexist. We don't have to transition to a scientific approach. I think there are ways that we can actually work on both. And from what we got from the communities and my experience is that to a certain extent, it is very accurate in terms of the predictions that they see, because they tell you in terms of the type of species that will be more dominant in the wetland and the sounds that they hear, that what it means. For instance, they were saying that when they are going to experience droughts, there will be a lot of these white butterflies, like which is a variety, a different species of butterflies, and that would be flying around and very dominant. And for them, it means that the season will be very dry. So, and if they have got a lot of swallows, you know, birds like swallows, it means that they are going to have a wet season. And it has been so. And some of these things are embedded in the songs, like stories also, traditional stories that we have heard when we were young and we never understood what they mean, but the communities are able to tell you. And for me, there was a story that I had heard when I was young. So when the old people were trying to explain what the story mean in terms of their understanding with the nature, it actually a light bulb moment for me to say, oh, we have been saying this, but we didn't know what really it means. So I think there is a space for traditional knowledge, traditional knowledge to coexist with science. The bigger question is, how do we ensure that this is actually, there is an interface and we actually work with both? Thank you.
Okay, so relatively to the SDGs, like the question he asked, the SDGs, we believe in Liberia, and I know globally it is a global call. And Liberia is no exception on implementing what the SDGs speaks about. So with this, through our NAP that call for the monitoring, evaluation, and learning platform, we feel that the MEL system is a plus for Liberia. It is a plus, and we are happy to have that system because it will also help us to track all of those outcomes, all of those steps, and all of those input that has to do with the SDGs. So for Liberia, we see that the MEL system, indeed, it is a plus, and we will be able to track the outcome and look at the reports that come forth on the SDG. Because mind you, all of our national documents built on the existing ones. For example, if you look at the Vision 2030 for Liberia, it did not just dry down in a sense that was under the then president regime. However, now we have the proposed agenda for the proposed agenda for prosperity and development. It also built on the previous document that has to do with the Vision 2030. So with looking at all of those documents, it also speaks to the implementation of the SDGs. So the MEL system now will just help us, give us that guidance part and report tangibles on those achievement of the SDGs.
Hans, I'm gonna ask you to do it in 1 minute.
Okay, just I want to say to my brother that, you know, a mixed method is one of the difficult methods. If you know, you didn't know it. Yeah, it's costly and it's hard. Even I don't know if you are planning to do a PhD, you are doing it. You have. So did you which approach did you use? Oh yeah, you see. So okay, you are at my side. Okay, that's good.
What did he use?
Qualitative.
Out of here.
Okay, that's all I said. That
Okay.
Mixed method. Myself, when I was doing my accounting, advanced accounting, and climate change, just a dissertation. I told my chair, I said, no, I need to do the mix because I need to play with numbers. He said, you don't have time, okay? It takes time. You take the two methods, you are done. Sometimes it's hard for you to go to the end because doing the dissertation in scholars and academically, you have just a limited time. That's why I say, go back to where you were. You have been,
Hey.
okay? Thank you.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Do you want to add something now? No, that's fine. Great. On this note, I would like to ask everybody to thank our panel. Thank you very much, dear audience, for your energy and your questions tonight, and have a good evening.